Today we got Johnny Oduya, former NHL professional, two-time Stanley Cup winner, and I believe a runners-up in the Olympics. Welcome.
Thank you.
The reason why we invited you is most people know you for all these things and many more. You played over a decade in NHL and a famous hockey player, but you also have a lot of interest in breathing. And we met on one occasion when you went through the Oxygen Advantage course. So we kind of want to talk about the importance of breathing. And I know you're opening up the studios across Stockholm now, but before we kind of dig into that, maybe take a step back and tell us a little bit how it all started.
Yeah, what part? First of all, I'm super happy. I'm super happy to be here. I want to say that as a start. I really I dig both of you guys. Obviously, met you in Denmark before this pandemic, and squeezed in the last training, so to speak, with Patrick. And yeah, I got to know you there, Daniel. We talked a lot. Every break, I think it's almost we felt like we were skipping class at times, but we weren't. So yeah, that's super nice. So yeah, but so what part specifically, like where do you want to?
Well, I think you maybe start with a brief background from because I know your background, and you I think you made your success from a lot of hard work. So maybe. I know you didn't play in the Swedish TV book, like you didn't have the clear-cut career maybe as the super junior like some maybe like Peter Forsberg and so on. So how you maybe briefly from how you started and leading up to NHL.
Okay, briefly. Yeah, I think you're kind of right with that. I was never the superstar player, and I think I had an ambition that was quite high, quite the path. So I was on the hockey rinks very early. My brother played, and it was just a part of life for me in the beginning. And over time, obviously, playing in Stockholm, growing up, different teams, and moved to Gothenburg and played there actually for a year or two for Frölunda, which was fantastic for me. And after that, I went to the US to play. Basically, I played 1 year in junior hockey too in Canada when I was 19, but I came back. It didn't really work out the way I wanted to. I thought I could just skip right to the NHL, but it didn't work. So I had to come back home and play pro a couple more years at home. And but I think that was good for my development in a way. I think it's a change in how to get to the NHL now compared to when I played when I was younger. It's way more intense and way more faster track to get there. You want to get guys that are like 18 years old, and everybody's going to play in the NHL right away. The league is way younger than when I came in. I was 24, I think, that year, and that would be seemed like quite late now. And I was one of the younger guys in the team then. I think we had like five guys that was over 36 or something, which is quite unusual these days. So I was kind of like always trying to make like one step at a time, so to speak. And really, I wouldn't say I had the fully focus on just, the NHL in that sense, but, winning the Stanley Cup was the only really thing that I had in my mind the whole time. And, of course, Olympics and being national teams and all of these things are for me more than an honor and a place to, compete against the best also, but really an honor to represent your country. Whereas I never really had the gold medal in my head. I was more of the Stanley Cup that was always there. And yeah, it turned out eventually I ended up on a quite good team and fitted in. I think that's probably one of the things that I'm good at, that I find a way in different places and different environments and try to adapt and try to learn as much as possible. And that's basically what I'm doing now too. I'm trying to adapt and learn as much as I can. So I think that's the short version of my background in hockey anyways. Yeah.
So when you got to NHL, it was around 2006, 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how was that change? I mean, did they have any of, I mean, obviously they have a physio and so on, but as far as the rest of the mental aspects that we're going to get into, like meditation, breathing, sleep hygiene, because hockey is very tough. You travel a lot. So how was that aspect?
I think when I came in, there was not that much talk about any of these things, really. I mean, it depends a little bit of the organization. I was in New Jersey, which was fantastic at that time, and really good structures and everything, and really wanted to take care of the players. So there was an element of it. I don't know if it was maturity, from the leagues or from the teams, but I saw this development coming way later in my career, and it was fully, I think, for me, when I actually got to Chicago at the end there, actually, that I think that mentality changed a lot. And, I think it's a natural thing. When you're under 30 or 25, you think you're invincible and you're going to play forever and everything's like fantastic, and you don't really think about much else, which in kind of some ways you probably shouldn't. And once you like hit 30, then it's like you're battling every year to stay in the game, so to speak. And over 35 for sure. And some of these guys over 40 now, and they could probably attest to that too, that you don't get any faster. You get maybe a little bit smarter, but everything else is kind of going the other way, So you start to think about how you can affect that in a different way. And I think for me, overall performance is something I've been worried about for, I would say probably 10 years now, or at least 8. And that's all different aspects. And the changes I saw mostly was, people started talking about training in different ways. Are you like maybe all these heavy lifting and like muscle building bigger guys? I mean, the game changed too. When I came in, I was a small, fast guy. And when I left, I was like, medium size and slow kind of. So the game has also changed a lot, which I think is actually for the better, instead of just all this hacking and whacking. I think it's more fun to watch, actually. But I saw the change in that. And with that also, a higher general skill level. So you have to find something to be able to compete. Training alone will not just do that. You need to find something else. And we saw these, changes obviously in food. After that, we started talking about sleep and maybe some of these like cognitive things. In Chicago, we had a like psychotherapist coaches you could talk to, but I know some guys are quite hesitant. It's a little bit like, it's like open the can of worms. You don't really want to touch that. So I didn't really talk to him that much. It's always also difficult because he's there because of management. So you don't know what's going the other way. Like there's a lot of things there that are quite difficult, So, and then after, I think in the end of my stay there and the career, it's a lot of the recovery functions are coming in, ice bathing and saunas and infrareds and different therapies and electric training, and like all of these different things are coming into play. So guys are really amping up, and I feel this last aspect now is really the mental development part that is coming in. And here breathing is really something different compared to a full mindful practice, which I also love. I love meditation, but it could be quite difficult to get a 25-year-old to do that, and especially if they're high intense and really, performance-driven individuals. So I think this is kind of a natural progression that we're seeing, and more minds are opening up to it than before.
Yeah, because I think it's a normal progression, because I think the physical part is easier to handle. Like you have to almost touch it like physical therapy or cold immersion, because it's a little bit tougher, and but when you get into meditation, breathing, and psychotherapy, it's the mental aspect. And most people don't go to a therapist and say, I feel so good, I have to go to a therapist. It's usually a negative connotation associated with it. So, but I think it's coming. It's moving. The needle is moving that way. But since you left, do you know if it's gone even further? That are these practices coming into play more and more in general?
I would say I think some guys are introduced to it now. I started to see a little bit of it, like spot-wise, especially in the NHL, and so I think it's moving a little bit. And the sneaky thing with some of these practices is, if you have an edge in a way. I was joking about this when we were starting to do. And Chicago was fantastic because anything you wanted to do that would like enhance performance for you and your team, they were like, okay, let's do that. We want to be the best, and so to speak. So we tried a lot of things, from like electromagnetic training stuff to, supplements or whatever it was, so all legal. So I want to just disclaim that so nobody said anything about that. But it was a very open, it was very open like that. And they wanted us to explore and do that. And you actually got respect for doing it, which I think was different from a lot of maybe other places at the time.
So you're saying it's coming from, but you had to pick it up yourself. So if you wanted to do, it didn't come from the organization. It came from individual players.
Yeah, I mean, we had a really good staff there. Both coaching, but also the medical staff that was quite open to it. And I think a lot of times that's kind of not the resentment, but they're a little bit scared and they don't want to like take things in and they want to control what's going on. There was quite open. A lot of people or players that are using things like these, I think even now, if you have an advantage, you have an advantage, right? So you don't really want to give that away. And like I said, that was the point I was trying to make. Like in Chicago, we started worried about food and nutrition and all these things. And I was happy if somebody was eating, a pizza on the other side, because then I know it's like, if they're not, at least I have some advantage, So it could be that we're seeing in the beginning of this now that the people that are really finding these methods, that they're not really spoken out loud about them, because they not that they don't want other people to learn, but more that they want to try to keep the advantage maybe too. So I think we're seeing like both of that. And once it's kind of breaking open and everybody knows about it, it's a different thing. Then it's more of like, are you actually going to apply it or not? But we're still kind of early there. So I think some are using it, but they're not really saying that.
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. That is why I get that from some people. Why aren't people talking about it? And I tell them it's because if you're at a team or an individual sport, you don't want to talk about your advantages. You want to keep them to yourself, at least during your career. Maybe afterwards you speak about it. So I think that is one reason why you keep it a little bit tight and you don't know about it. So yeah, but so basically it's been a development, so to speak, for you, and it was has breathing methods did you do it during the career, or did it come after you stopped playing?
I played around a little bit with it and not enough. If it's one thing that I actually like I said, if you that's why this is so interesting. You dive into something, and I dive into a lot of different topics, and especially when everything's connected to well-being and performance. And this somehow I missed, which in my mind is just ridiculous. That's crazy to me. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm trying to make that a change for younger players or athletes or people in general. Yeah.
Well, you can make a comeback. I mean, Chris Chelios played till he was 48, so you got plenty of time. You just have to have to do it for a year and then come back.
I didn't use it as much as I wanted to. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. I would have loved to discover this when I was 25. Like, it would have been just fantastic. like the single thing I can point out that I really felt that this would have made a difference for me for everything else that I did, and not just for my career, but well-being or self-reflecting or stress man, whatever. Like it would have been really nice. And yeah.
I think, Johnny, just stepping in, that I really feel that breathing has just had a bad rap, and I often say it in podcasts that people don't realize the potential of it. It's really unfortunate that universities didn't do more research in it, because especially universities who are really about improving sports performance. And I also think about the youngsters who genetically may have a little anxiety or poor sleep. And even just this week, I realized from one study, 43% of rugby players having sleep disorder breathing. Like, this is crazy stuff. And here are a cohort of individuals, also in top sports, something is holding them back, but nobody is necessarily bringing attention to that thing. And when we look at breathing, this is not just for yogis. This is for anybody who wants to achieve and looking for incremental gains across a number of things. I'm interested because I think oftentimes the word mindfulness is wonderful, but it can put people off. But if we practice focusing on the breath and improving blood flow to the brain, we can improve concentration. So we have the mental aspect of it. What tools, if you were to break down a hockey game, or not necessarily even a hockey game, but a hockey training, what breathing exercises or what ideas would you think? I know you might be disclosing some secrets here, but what breathing exercises would you think could be useful? And talking about nose breathing, breath holding, sleep, etc.
Well, there's many aspects here, and like I said, I've been trying like most of them or all of them on myself, obviously. And I also have a group of players. I think we talked about that a little bit this summer, that I train in the summertime, and it's a mix of players. Some of them are in the NHL or in Sweden, or they play in Europe, different places. And I was trying to sneak in the breathing and like the protocols as much as I could, because I really believe this is something good for them. And trying to get them to understand that this is important, obviously. So you can work at different things, but there's some part of the preparation, obviously, and there you have a lot of your breath hold ideas and warm-ups, really, when you can incorporate that. And we did that a lot. I really liked the apnea, or the moving apnea, or whatever you would call it, where you're basically doing exercises on exhale breath holds, and get that nice spleen contraction and activation to raise the levels of the CO2 and really try to train that function. And that's a really good starting function to do. And then when we talk about, coming into games or coming into practices, really try to maybe during warm-ups using your nose as much as you can to really open up that function as well. During games, I don't really emphasize anybody to try to think about it, because I think if you do that in the off time or in the off season where you can adapt to it, it takes a little bit of time to adapt to it. And we saw some tremendous changes in the 3 or 4 months during the summer, where some guys that they had a broken septum or something, and all of a sudden they can actually start to use it, which is kind of strange. Not as before, but they could actually get some ventilation through it. So it was quite interesting too. So try to get them to incorporate the nose breathing a lot in the warm-ups as much as they can. We tried a couple of times even on the ice doing that. And that part I think is really important. If you want to have like before games or something like that, I haven't recommended kind of the alternate breathing or the Wim Hof techniques, but some players actually get really nice, relaxed and balanced from that one. I know some other ones that will do more of the slower breathing, just the cadence breathing to actually activate box breathing for sure. That's kind of a given. So that's some of the techniques you can do before. And obviously when you're on the ice, like I said, you don't want to think about it too much, but a lot of guys now actually have the mouthpiece anyway, so that keeps their nose closed a lot of the times. And when I think the biggest impact or the biggest thing to think about is when you come back to the bench and you're getting ready for the next shift, or you sit in there like hyperventilating or hyperventilating, or you're trying to calm yourself down and then breathe through your nose and then get ready, for the next shift. I think that's a kind of the no-brainer of breathing as of now. So
I think in terms of hockey, I'm sure you do a lot of anaerobic shuttle tests, because it must be a feature of the game. It's a high intensity sprint followed by a very brief recovery, and it's something that happens throughout a hockey game. Do you ever prepare with it in terms of measuring repeated sprint ability in athletes, and to even superimpose some breath holding during some sprints to push the boundaries even further, to improve the buffering capacity of the athlete so that they'd be less gassed out and they would have a quicker recovery during their time out or whatever?
And here I've been using that the rugby protocol, and I think we talked about that a little bit too, where especially in the summertime, so twice a week we'll do, that's a part of the warm-up, the breath hold shuttle running or whatever you would call it. And we saw, like I saw an enormous improvement just in that by itself, but also I think one thing that's important also is the subjective feeling of being out of air or not having the stamina or whatever you would call it, right? So we do a lot of training, but we emphasize a lot, and especially with Vladimir, that is a really, really good coach that I had for a long time, and the one I'm helping, I'm assisting him now training the other guys, and we want to find the minimal dose of what you kind of need to do for getting the maximum result. Like training athletes, you can pound them with stuff and they would just like, oh yeah, nice, more stuff, and they would love it. And then over time, when you get older, you're going to wear down. And I think the idea with the breathing here is the same thing. Like, can you find a minimal effect? Can you do shuttle runs instead of a normal, but on breath holds? And maybe you can do half of them and you get the effect is even better. And so for me, that's an interesting aspect, not to having them on the field for 2 hours, but maybe do it for 20 minutes and then you're done. So we did that, and the results were interesting, both subjective, how they're feeling, but we also got some results back from some VO2 testing that guys have been doing the years before, and the numbers actually increased, and they've basically been doing the same thing. And I don't know if it's that. I can't say 100%, but there's some interesting correlation for sure.
Yeah,
and
it was something. It was something different that you brought in, and because of the something different that you brought in, you've seen a change. I think that's an interesting point. If we talk about athletes, the training can be so intense that the athlete can be prone to injury. And it really doesn't make sense. I see it in MMA fighters. We see it in different team sports. Why not do breath holding with either less intensity or less reps to get a stronger effect? So I would agree with that. Yeah. Just for the people listening, the NHL is the National Hockey League. Just in case you're not aware of it. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
How do you get a buy-in from? Starting with yourself, if somebody came to you when you were 22, 25, telling you that this is really good for you, and how do you deal with other ones now who are the same age? How do you get them to realize that this is very good for them?
Of course, authority or whatever you would call it makes a difference. So that's why I feel like this is something actually I can affect here, because in sports or in hockey, those who know me at least know that I like these type of things, and hopefully younger players too will actually, maybe they see something, they're like, oh, okay, we want to do that, or we don't want to do that. It doesn't really matter. It's more of it's almost like the Trojan horse in a way, where they're looking maybe for something else, and then I can kind of sneak this in, you know. So that's exactly what I'm doing with some of the players. But and then obviously getting the feedback if it's useful for them and they like it, and then some other younger ones are interested, you know, and they want to do something different. I don't know if somebody would approach me once I was 25. I probably would have been quite open to it, depending on obviously who it is. But if it's somebody that I kind of trust and look up to, then I would be quite open to that for sure. So you know, there's kind of two ways. There's one of the factual way, or the truth, or whatever you would call it, and then you have the role model part, and I think I'm trying to bring both of those and get as much information and try a lot of things on myself, of course, and then be able to understand what, like, in what situation and for what player could this be a good idea to do. So trying to use both of them, I would say.
It's, I mean, of course, the hockey player you were, and when you tell somebody else this will help you, you come from a place where they kind of trust you that it will work. It's more difficult for somebody who's coming from the outside. Just tell them this is good for your ice hockey, or any sport for that matter. If you haven't been an elite player in that sport, it's easier to get trusted. And I can only speak for myself. If I was 25 and somebody came to me talking about stuff that we're talking about, highly doubtful that I would have listened to that. Very, very doubtful.
And the players are also very, how do you say it? Skrockfull in Sweden. I can't remember where it is now.
Yeah, they have their own little rituals.
Superstitions and rituals. And I had too. And I think rituals are good. And that's why it's so interesting when to implement this too. You know, it's way easier approaching somebody that's been sitting on the bench or not playing for a long time, or having a bad year or whatever, compared to like going to somebody that just scored 50 goals. They're going to be like, what am I going to talk to you? So also finding when to approach people, I think it's important, and not in the sense that you actually, you know, you're trying to sell them something that they don't want. More in the approach of, this could actually help you at this point, and maybe if you do this, you won't end up in this type of a slump next time. So players are very you know, slow and hesitant with a lot of things like that, or not everybody, I would say, but the majority, in a way, I would say. You want to kind of keep to the traditions and the structures that you do, and especially if you're, you know, NHL players, you're there for a reason, you know. So there might be that you hit a wall at some point where you feel that what you have at the time is not enough, and then you start to look outside. Okay, what can I apply? So that's, I think, the approach with that, when to approach them, is also very important.
I think also, or sorry, Daniel, I think I suppose, Johnny, we want to really break breathing down to where we can bring it in seamlessly. We don't want to disrupt anybody's training regime. And we understand that, you know, if I said to an athlete, you're a professional athlete and now I want you breathing through your nose 100% of the time, we know it would be totally ludicrous. But there's points, I suppose, that we want to know the game very well. You know your game very well. And there's places that you can bring in subtle breathing exercises without disrupting any training regime, but bringing in benefits. And the other thing about it that I found when I was working with some of the rugby guys, if they feel a bit of pain, it can help, you know. They feel their nose opening up pretty quickly. We can increase blood flow to the brain. We can stress the body, and a good stress. And they feel the lactic acid. They feel their legs going jelly. And then they start to realize, I think part of human thing is about the experience of it. Sometimes, you know, because we could talk about theory, and maybe there's some people that want to hear the theory, but there's some people who want to feel it. What's going on here? And that's part of it, isn't it? It's almost that experiment, a little bit, not necessarily experimentation, but I suppose experimentation on oneself until one gets more comfortable with it.
100%. I think that's the biggest part of breath work. I mean, we all kind of know this, and this is what we have in our other, you know, the regular classes, so to speak. When we don't have athletes, you have to try this and experience these different levels for yourself. And your body is storing a lot of things that could be tough to access in a cognitive way. You can't think about it. It's like reading a book. You have to apply it and then actually do the things in it. Otherwise, it's not real. Otherwise, it's just a book, or in your head. Yeah. And in sports, we're talking about this, and it's quite common sense that you have this muscle memory. You go to the gym and you do something and your body remembers. But when it comes to your body, or emotions or stored or whatever it is, then it's like, no, that's not in your body. That's just in your mind. So I think breath work is so nice in that aspect that you can get inside of your body and kind of release some of these things, and you can focus on other things, and you can focus on your breathing if you want to, and kind of get the ease and a different mind going into like anything else you're doing. So I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Do you think it's a good idea to using the subjective validation, but also the objective, like an aura ring or pulse oximeter, bolt score, MBT, like all these in parallel? Because obviously you want to feel good and all that, but also initially, I think it's usually important for most people to get some sort of physical validation, also see progress. How much of that do you use, tests and HRV and so on?
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's in production mode, I would say, I think obviously you need to balance that. I don't think you should just measure anything for just measuring it. And you also, you need to understand how to relate to it. I think you need to also actually sense in yourself what's going on, not just, look at the measurements. But I think it's a very, very good thing to do. Obviously, I have an Aura ring myself and had it for 2 years or something like that now. And it's really good to get a baseline idea. There's other things you can do. You obviously can use the heart math if you want, and measure the HRV. And I mean, there's many tools you can use that I think are really good. And especially when it comes to some players or some individuals that are very fact driven in a way that like they need to see something before they can step into it. And then why not use that? I think that's a good tool to use. But then on the backside also, understand how to relate to it. It's like, use your phone. It's okay, but don't let your phone use you. It's kind of the same thing. So I think a good balance, but for sure you can bring that in and do. And I recommend a lot of those things to different folks. I have a glucose meter on me right now, actually, that I'm actually using for a little bit. So I love measuring stuff, but also kind of try to have a healthy relationship to what you're measuring. So
how is that affected by your like if you do strong breath holds or slow breathing? I guess that's one of the reasons. How do you see a difference before and after?
Yeah, it's actually funny you talked about that, but because I did some longer like breath holds this morning, just passively, and I do that like once or twice a week, trying to really try to push the envelope as much as I can, and you get a nice little spike of I would assume, because you're stressing your body a little bit, you get a little spike of the cortisol, and then obviously the sugar or the glucose is following that. So for anybody trying to wake up in the morning, that some breath holding would be a super good thing to do. And like you said, you're basically preparing your body for, it's releasing the energy because it wants to do something, so that's super interesting you asked that. And there's something that I've been noticing, especially for glucose levels in the morning. So it's interesting stuff.
Do you use any other of the like the Oxygen Advantage? Do you track your bolt score every now and then, or do an MBT or anything else on a regular basis?
Yeah, yes and no. I did more before. Now I feel kind of comfortable. I notice now, because I do more of the breath hold, so I notice quite early with the first breath hold where I'm at. So I wouldn't say I do so much testing. I recommend it to people, though. I think it's tremendous, a really good, easy way to do it. And yeah, I would say I did more before. Yeah, so I had like, you know, a month or something when I really like measured it down and tried to figure out. And after a while, you with all of these things, like I said, you get an idea of who you are in a way, where how you react to things and what happens. And like I said, now it's mostly like doing the first round of the breath holding. I notice right away if it's, you know, do I feel stress? Can I hold it? Like what's going on in my body? So yeah.
I agree. I think, again, I think these tools are tests and the O-ring and all these things are very good initially. After a while, you learn to sense how your body performs, and you can also shift from day to day. I used to have very stringent routines, but over time, you feel if is today a good day to do similarly high altitude training or slow breathing, or one of my favorites is many small warm-ups. So, but you kind of shift because of how you feel. But before it was mostly you do it regardless, and now you're more sensitive. So it seems like you're almost the same. You kind of you do it, but you kind of shift in and out depending on what you need, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's a good. I wouldn't say I recommend it for everybody. Like some people are better at like pacing in and like get the routine. I'm more of like, I want to jump in and see how it affects me right away. And then I take a couple of weeks or a month or whatever it is. Sometimes the biggest issue I have, I tend to do a lot of things at once. So it's like tough to like, oh, is that working or that working? But I'm trying to separate it as much as possible and really like trying to go into one technique or something and get understanding how it affects me. You know, that's the same in breathing too, to understand the, you know, different approaches and different, you know, different styles. And I think it's impossible for me to recommend it if I don't at least understand for myself how it's working. And then other people, of course, they have to try it in a sense too. It doesn't mean that it works for them just because it works for me, but at least that for me, that's the first step. And I think with these tech stuff, it's kind of the same, you know, but some of them are good. I mean, yeah, I like it.
And also, I think a combination of doing it, like right now, for the past 6 months, I've done a lot of breathing techniques in combination with cold water. Yeah. So combining like two good habits also get an extra effect. So I've been experimenting a lot on that. I don't know if you do anything. Do you do any cold water immersion, or do you combine different habits to get an extra effect?
Yeah, I have been. I have a little tub in my house, a normal tub that is filled up. Now in the wintertime, it's actually quite nice. It's like 7 degrees or something like that. And if I don't do that, I do the cold showers usually. I also have it is a lake, I guess, but not too far from my house. I can actually jog over, like in the city kind of. So I kind of go there. It's like a little dog beach. So in the winter time, I go down there and I like take all my stuff off and I go into the water, and then people are walking their dogs, and the dogs are so happy because there's somebody in the water. They're like, oh, nice. Nobody's been in the water for 4 months. So they're like jumping after me and stuff, but it's nice. I do it. I try to do it at times. Not so much now lately, but I like the sensations and obviously the physical benefits and everything. I mean, the cold bathing now, like when we made it quite popular. We have influencers here now in Sweden doing cold baths and stuff. So it's quite popular. And then of course, being in the climate we're in up here, it's kind of crazy that we don't use it more, and we kind of did before. And traditions like cold bathing has been tradition in Sweden for a long time, and you know, Finnish communities, the sauna and the cold bathing, that's really a pillar, I would say, in their community. So yeah, I try to use it at times. I think it's really good tools, heat, like infra saunas and regular saunas, like all of those things, light therapy. You know, there's a bunch of things you can do. Obviously, that's nice to do and play around with. Yeah.
Johnny, in terms of mental focus, you were talking about even when you were an athlete. What's the difference with what people are doing today? Because sometimes I think that now people have more and more distractions than ever before, and it's almost that they're training their brain to be distracted. And this, of course, is going to affect concentration and attention. What can you say, or is there any way that you assess whether an athlete has a racing mind, whether their mind is actually impacting performance in their game? If the head isn't in it, the game is over. So mental focus is very important. Of course, this ties in with breath, it ties in with sleep. Is there a way to assess? I think there is a stigma attached that people will be, afraid to say if they've got a racing mind. So it's almost that we shouldn't necessarily be giving people a choice, and we're not doing meditation or mindfulness, but we're bringing in breathing exercise to improve focus and concentration. Does that happen? And what are the minds of individuals, youngsters now, who've been grown up with mobile phone technology? It's been around since maybe about 2008 in terms of the smartphone. Have you seen a negative impact? Have you seen more anxiety? And what's going on with it?
Good question. I mean, this is for sure a societal question, I would say. I don't really think we know the impact yet. We're going to see here in upcoming years how this is affecting, but I think in general, the speed of society and it's slowed down a little bit now during the pandemic, which is one of the positive things I actually think coming out of this. A lot of more reflection, and but in general, I mean, it's going to speed up again, and how to balance this in a modern way, so to speak, is very, very interesting. And like regardless if you're playing hockey or not, this is something that's super interesting. And I think actually the bowl test and the start of the bowl test there is a really good one, because it shows the ones I see have a really tough time and their mind is everywhere. They might be down to like 5 seconds, and it's like they're just gasping for air. So there's some type of hyperactivity going on.
And Johnny, sorry to cut across you, this is even with athletes who are well trained.
Oh yeah, guaranteed, 100%. It doesn't matter. Like breathing here, this is a misconception that's interesting, and I know you talked about this a lot. That just because you're an athlete, you know how to breathe, or you can control, or you have control over body function, so to speak. I mean, what athletes actually are really good at is compensation. So they're really, really good at making something out of nothing, so to speak, and that's really the genetic code for athleticism, or whatever you would call it, in my mind. That you don't have only have one leg, and somehow you manage to use the other one, so you're like excelling. And if this would have been another regular person, they would have been in the hospital, so the body constantly adapts and changes and have the ability to do this and develop in a sense that is abnormal compared to the normal population, so to speak. And the idea that your breathing is perfect just because you're an athlete, that's an illusion. I don't believe that at all. Like anything, like why would that function be perfect if nothing else is? We see a bunch of different things. It could be running mechanics or jumping or lifting, or like we're training techniques everywhere. So even skating, you're training skating technique, and then you would say, well, why does a hockey player need to train skating technique? They're skating all the time. It doesn't make sense. So trying to get away from that and actually show them that there are things they can do. And like you said here, showing how active, active nervous system will have an active mind. Like it's 100%, it's connected, it's connected to the vagus nerve. So if they can't, have a breath hold for more than 5 seconds and then kind of losing their mind, then we know there's something in there that's we need to look at, and how we're going to do that approach. That could be different, but it's a really good test, I think, for that. Yeah.
Great.
Also, now you are opening up some studios in Stockholm, where you're going to be focusing on mostly, I guess, breathing, but maybe also some other things. And what is your plan with those centers, and who who are you trying to reach mostly with that?
Yes, so HALE is what we call it, and we want to try to combine all these beautiful things. So basically, we're trying to do physically what James Nestor did in his book, and really, gathering all these fantastic ways of applying this, and really letting people choose what to apply and when, so to speak. So we operate like a regular studio with different type of classes, and we're opening up now in April. And the idea is to, really raise the consciousness of breathing and how that can affect you. And second, like you said, both of you said before, try to understand the impact of this. And being in this community now for 2 years or something like that, I think it is so obvious that this is just, people need to understand this, and they need to incorporate this in some type in their life, just as you do with training, or as yoga has done for a long time, or whatever it is. So
and
yeah.
Johnny, who are you going to aim it towards? Are you going to aim it towards the athlete or the normal everyday person? What space are you going to occupy?
Yeah, we're doing both. I mean, the studios are basically for the normal people, so to speak. And then us, the more extreme ones, there's some classes for the extreme ones too. But I really like the spectrum of, we have some of the deeper and more like, abstract breathing techniques. And then obviously we have more of the common ones. And we really want to affect the regular working people, so to speak, that have a high stressed life. You might have kids, bunch of things going on, coming in, 20, 25, 27, starting at that age and starting to get an idea. And then obviously we'll run up, breathing really is for everyone.
Yes.
For us, it really
and
is
for life.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to try to affect the wider population. And then my part in this, along with, I got 2 other hockey players with me now, which is quite beautiful. One of which I played a long time with before. We're kind of into the sports section where we're trying to kind of like, we talked about, Daniel, trying to go into maybe hockey and like different sports, and trying to see if we can raise this consciousness and, really work with this. And that, like, there's so much to do here. It's like, just looking in Sweden, when it comes to, players or athletes or coaches, it's like, we need like 100 people more or 1,000 more working with this, because there's so much to do. So I'm trying to just get everybody on board that I can, kind of, and really that's what we're trying to do. I would say.
Yeah, it sounds super. We're covering some of the ground ourselves as well. In terms of the exercise, we've expanded them to 25, and so yeah, it's interesting. It's almost that we're going in the same direction, which is great. But Johnny, I totally agree. I'm nearly 50 years of age, and breathing still remains to be a big part of my life. And in terms of sleep, in terms of focus, concentration, energy, and happiness, and I just feel that it has been totally overlooked. And only since 2020 has it really, really taken off. And it's taken off to the point that I was a lone ranger with one colleague working with me for about 17 years. And now we have a support staff of 10 people. So for that to happen in 2 years or so, and it brings its own challenges, but definitely I think the time is right for breathing. It's certainly riding on the back of the Wim Hof method on James Nestor's book. And people who are in this space, and people are starting to realize it. And I think it's tremendous. It's been long time waiting.
And I think it can be, like we're talking about, applied anywhere, because if you're a young hockey player, for better physique and mentality, for older hockey player, for longevity, because I think you can still shift the age a little bit more. Maybe not like Chris Chelios 48, but maybe instead of ending your career around 35, maybe closer to 40, maybe, or 38, maybe. You see in every sport they're pushing it more and more, and in work, to be able to sustain a high stress load in work with a family and everything. So I think breathing techniques, and especially Oxygen Advantage, it could be applied anywhere, to any age, at any time, and that's what's so fantastic. But I think it's a matter of just people realizing this, and that takes time, and that's what you're trying to do now, Johnny, as well. And it will take time, but I think it will come in the next decade. I think we'll see a slow progression towards an increase of awareness.
Yeah. And for children, Johnny, maybe you have a children's program as well. It would be very good.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to get into that too. I see some or a lot of people talking about that. I know Dan Brulé is talking about it a lot too. So yeah, I mean that's the best way to do it. You know, to get them early, to get them to understand what's going on. So I mean, there's so much. That's why this is so fun for me too. That there really is an enormous challenge here, and it's really fun to do this. And I feel. You know, I'm in a luxury position in my life where I can basically choose to do whatever I want. And this is, I feel, what I can do and kind of give back, in a, so to speak, where I feel I can do or give the most impact to people. So I agree 100%. It's something that needs to, you know, expand more. And I think it's time for it. Yeah. Mm.
I think we will wrap it up, and we even might leave it at that note. Do you want to add anything further, Daniel?
No, I mean, I that's it basically, and I just wish Johnny all the best because all these initiatives with these types of focus on breathing and well-being is really a great time, I think, and especially in a big city like Stockholm where people leave and they live a very hectic life. I think this is ideal kind of to be able to go to a place to slow down, so to then be able to maybe speed up when you get outside, but you need places to center yourself. So I wish you all the best with that.
Absolutely. I do too. I think it's tremendous. Well done, Johnny.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, and I appreciate also both of you. Obviously, Daniel, for reaching out. It is my first podcast, by the way. So,
you've done very well for your first podcast.
Okay, thank you very much. And then, yeah, of course, Patrick there. Like, I wanted to add too. Like, we talked about before here, but your part of what you've been doing here for a long time is really admirable, and it's for me, it's. You know, I want to kind of keep running, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the training we had in Denmark was fantastic. And I would recommend anybody to do that if you want to go deeper into these aspects of really trying to understand you know, the physical part and the training part. And for me, I thought it was tremendous, like the probably the best training I've done so far. So I really want to recommend that to everybody.
Thanks so much, Daniel. We're going to close it off with that. Thanks.